This afternoon I'm going to talk about the places I called home. That's a good title, I guess. The places I called home. I started the first thing I can remember is the two flat where we lived upstairs above my grandmother's. It was a I think 3-bedroom. Yeah, you know, a front bedroom, two, like a back bedroom, like a bedroom in the middle. Then they had a bathroom, and then a kitchen, and then it had a living room and a dining room, like a front of the front part. The front part that we had a oil stove because it was a cold water flat, so we had an oil stove in between the living and the dining room. There was an oil stove that would heat those two rooms and the front bedroom. But nobody slept in that front bedroom, so we closed it off. And then there was a door between the kitchen and the living dining room area, and we had closed that off. So we had no heat then in the living room, dining room, and that back bedroom, and we would just heat the kitchen. And the kitchen would heat the kitchen, the bathroom, and my folks' room, and then my room, which was was in the back. We did that till we moved to the store. When my sister came, to keep her warm, in that they put a crib in the kitchen, right next to the stove, so that she would always be in the stove. Always be in the kitchen next to the stove where it was warm. I lived there until I was 12, and my folks bought the store. Now the store was. That was different. It was an old building. We had one of those old flush toilets. They had the box on near the ceiling, and you pull the chain and to make it flush. It was the original crapper, they call it. I guess crapper is the guy that invented it. So that we had that. Now, as we had the kitchen there, and then we had the living room, then we had a bedroom up front, and then next to that, my folks had a bedroom, and then right off of the kitchen there was a bathroom. That also was a cold water flat, so we had a stove in both cold water flats. We had a stove in the kitchen that was a stove and a heater, so it would also heat the area, but my mom could cook on it and do different things on that. And that's the way I lived in Chicago from about 12 till I was, let's see, I think I was about 16. And then of course I left I went from the store. I went to live at college. The first quarter I was there, I lived with a family. They rented a room, and I lived there. And then I decided to join a fraternity. So I went to join a fraternity called Phi Kappa. It's now called Phi Kappa Theta, but when I was there, it was just called Phi Kappa. It was a Catholic fraternity, and it had a very good reputation in the college. They always were ranked. They always ranked number one in scholastics, and always had we had probably the most trophies than any of the fraternities from all different sports, from basketball, football. So it was a pretty neat fraternity. So I joined them, and of course I came in as a pledge, and I was on probation in that second quarter, and being on probation to live in the fraternity, you had to go into a little room. They call it the cubby hole. It was you had to like crawl in. There was two. I don't know how they even got them in there. There was two desks in there, and you had to go in there and study. And that was, it was like solitary confinement almost. It was just a small little room. But I was on probation, and that was the thing. I had to study there, and then they had up in the attic. They had like a dormitory set up. So that's where I slept. So, but mostly the time I was in this cubbyhole studying, and there was just two desks in there, and I don't even remember if it had I think it had a little window in it, but I can't really recall that. And then came in there with me, who was also on probation, was my roommate, John Schmaltz, and he and I would go in there and study for hours and hours and hours. And so at the end of that quarter, by golly, I did real well. Got good grades, got off probation. So then he did the same. Then he and I moved into a front room bedroom. And there we had it was a neat room. We had our bunk beds there. John always liked to sleep on top, so he slept on top. I slept on the bottom bunk. Then we had a large like bay window we could see outside. It was really a neat room. And that's where I spent till I graduated. It was a neat place. It was a neat fraternity, and it was nice. The house burned down, so it's not there anymore. But when it was really a nice fraternity. I graduated, and I decided I was going to get a job. So I got a job at in Rockford at the Sunstrand Aviation. So I went to live in Rockford, and when I was living there, I was living with a bunch of guys in a rental. We rented an apartment, and there was four of us there. It was like a 4-bedroom, real tiny bedrooms apartment. But we all stayed there. But at that time I had to go in the service, and I was debating how to go. And I heard about this program called I can't remember what it was, Critical Skill Program. And if you were an engineer, you could sign up and take care of your military duty that way. The catch is that once after you signed up, you went through boot camp, and you spent 6 months in active service. But the only catch is that you had to spend 8 years in the reserves. So I decided, what the heck, I'm going to do that. So I left. I went and took made all the paperwork out. Went and took a physical. Decided that I was okay, and I went in the Navy. So I went in the Navy. Let's see, I graduated in in September, well, the end of August. So let's say I not graduated. I got my diploma in September, and so I lived with these guys in September and October and November, and then in December, I was still in Rockford, and starting in January, I went into the Navy. And then I was in January, February, March, April, May, June, July, and came back. It was like in August sometime. So when I was in the Navy, of course, I went through boot camp, and I lived with a bunch of guys in the boot camp. Then I went and was stationed then for 3 months in Patuxent River, Maryland, which was a Navy test facility where they tested jets. I stayed there and lived in a typical barracks with a whole bunch of guys, and lived there till I was released. I wasn't discharged. I was released because I was still in the reserves. Went back to Peoria, got a room with this Italian lady for let's see, September and October, so maybe a month or a month and a half, I guess, 2 months. It was room and board it was a reasonable nominal sum. It was real cheap, and so I stayed there. But I knew I was going to get married. So in October 19th, I got married, but we had to have a place to stay. So before we got married, somebody told me, or I read it in the newspaper, that there was a house for rent for 6 months. In other words, it would be October, November, December, January, February, March, and they were going to come back in April. So it was a farmer, and he had this nice little brick home. It was a little 2-bedroom. So I got to talk to him, and he rented to me pretty reasonable, and if I would take care of it. He left everything there. They left their pots, their pans, their TVs, and everything. So the only thing, after we got married, Jeanette and I moved in, and the only thing we had to take was our clothes. So we had no furniture, so we just went in there, and for 6 months we stayed at this place, at this little cottage and little room, this little house, and it was nice. It was like a little, I don't know, like a little honeymoon cottage. It was just the two of us, and it worked out real slick. Then we, of course, when they were coming back, we had to think of where are we going to live now after they come back. So I started looking around, and about 2 blocks from where we were, there was a electrical contractor's place. He had garages underneath. There was probably 4 or 5 garages, or 6 garages underneath, and on top was built these apartments. They were nice. We had a nice large apartment, 2-bedroom. It's telephone time. I'll be back.